Today I'm joined by Tom Wagner. He's Director of Global Mobility and Immigration with Micron Technology. Hi, Tom.
Hi, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. And how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
This is something we've often talked about in mobility, and we're starting to see it increase in importance. We're seeing global mobility managers and directors like yourself taking this very seriously because it's kind of at the heart of what we do in supporting employees, team members, and assignments. The topic is mental wellness in mobility. And before we begin, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about Micron's mobile employees because they're very special. And you refer to them as team members, in fact. Outside of the technical skills, can you also tell us about what type of talent and the mindset of a team member that it takes to support Micron as an industry leader and innovator?
Yeah, so thank you. That's a really good question. The the tech industry is pretty consistent across the board. Semiconductors are sort of a neat little piece of the tech industry, or a big piece of the tech industry. We like it to be bigger at some point too. But the people that work on these sorts of things are very unique, have a very unique skill set. They're innovators. They think differently. They are the ones who figure out how to make a chip the size of your fingernail that can do 1,000 or 100,000 functions per second, and that's pretty amazing to a simple mind like mine. So it takes a different type of person. They're very driven, and the thing that makes it unique as far as mobility goes is that they're paid to come up with new ideas. They're paid to break things. They're paid to make things better. So we've always got to be on our toes in the mobility team here and the immigration team, because they're always looking for different ways to do things. They're always challenging us. We have to have everything completely buttoned down, conversations, but not that we don't listen either. And when they come up with these new ideas, it's always an opportunity for us to learn something from them, because they're willing to share their experiences. They're willing to share their thoughts on what maybe we could do different or what maybe we could do better, because again, that's what they get paid for. That's their mindset.
Right. So there's a lot of I would assume pressure that comes with their roles, even before they're embarking on an assignment in a new location that they may have never been to before.
That's right. There's a lot of pressure in the industry. There's, we're working on these, cadence of manufacturing cadences, from conception to production, right, and sales to the suppliers and those sorts of things. We have a 12-month, what they call a 12-month cadence on our products, where when they start production to when they end production is 12 months. It's been estimated that if you can reduce that cadence production time by 1%, you can save 5%. So that's a pretty drastic ROI right there when you think about it. And that puts a ton of pressure on people to perform higher, to perform faster, to perform more efficiently.
Mm-hmm. And so I can only imagine then that supporting what they're going through, being able to manage that stress, how much is in their heads when they're thinking about their next role within Micron is going to play a really large importance. And because your team is right in front of them on a daily basis as they're going through this transition, that this is becoming more of an issue. So in your opinion, what's causing this recent increase of awareness about mental wellness in the workforce and in mobility?
Yeah, and in general, in life in general, I think it's all over the place, right? And I think there's two driving factors behind this, and I'll go through the first one. And the pandemic really accelerated the awareness. The research was there before, and the awareness had started before the pandemic. And I recall pre-pandemic workshops on suicide awareness and mental health and those sorts of things, and we sat through them and we listened to them, but it wasn't until the pandemic came along that really exaggerated the need for mental wellness and for just well-being in general, right? It was clear to us the value of mental health in our team members. It became very clear. everything sort of became more exposed. We became more personal with our team members. We shared the personal sides. We shared the pictures of our house. We had our dining room table on the camera and a wine cabinet in the back, and our dogs on camera, and those sorts of things that never happened before. So with this personal um, with this personal acceleration of information, really um, the natural come along was the mental health piece of that. So it really created vulnerabilities and allowed us to open up in a way that we've never really opened up before. And I come from a generation where we didn't open up. Men don't cry. You don't attend your baby's birth. Blah blah blah. My dad was a revolutionary because he was at my birth, right? Those sorts of things. And so that changed. And that brings me to the second piece of the driving factors that I believe is really pushing this, and that's the generational changes or the cultural changes due to the generational influences. We've got 5 generations in the workplace, and the younger generations really are more open about everything. Mental health being one of them. They're not afraid to speak up when they've got a problem. They're not afraid to tell you when they have a problem, and that's the shift that's really causing a lot of these changes as well.
Yeah. Actually, that's a great point, because it's something that we've been discussing quite a bit is in the industry, is these generational changes. And one thing that we've found out even before the pandemic is that the emerging workforce, those Gen Zs and some of the younger millennials, weren't afraid to ask their employers for whatever they want and make their their expectations clear. Where I think even going back to previous generations, we were more about we felt lucky to have the role.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
grateful to be at the party.
yeah.
So,
And there's a lot more crossover between the personal and the work life now than there was before. We used to pack our lunch and go to work and finish work and go home and hang out with our neighborhood friends. And I'm thinking about my son is on his way right now to Savannah, Georgia, with all of his work buddies. And I'm like, work buddies. Okay, that's a term I need to get used to. But it's just the changes happening. So
we've seen the lines blur between work
yes,
and personal, and I think some of those younger generations, and not just the younger generations, but I think we've all come to appreciate the people and the connections we make at work. And that's been something that became loud and clear in the past few years, is we're missing that connection, which puts more of that burden on their mental health and being able to build resilience within the organization and within themselves. So something that we've been we had a webinar recently, and we showed something called the 5 essentials for workplace mental health and well-being, and it was authored by the U.S. Surgeon General, and it had kind of 5 different pillars that they focused on. There's protection from harm, which I consider to be duty of care personally. Then there's work-life harmony, opportunity for growth, 4 is connection and community, and then mattering at work. Hearing all of those, and I know they're all important, is there any 1 or 2 of these that stand out to you as being most important in mobility? And where do you think a lot of mobility programs kind of miss the mark?
Well, I'm going to stand on a soapbox for a second here, and I love the subject of wellness. I'm going to say, I think using the 5 essentials of workplace mental health and wellness in the mobility context is missing the mark in and of itself. Mobility is not a work event. Mobility is a life event, right? So we have to look at the bigger picture. Let's not just look at what happens within the workplace. When a person relocates from point A to point B, probably the easiest thing for them is the adjustment in work, right? You already know your skill set. You know a lot of the people you're working with, or if you're new to the company, at least you know your skill set. You know your value. When you move from point A to point B, your entire life is disrupted. So much more than just your work life, right? So you lose your sense of community. You lose your you lose your physician. You got to find a new doctor. Your kids have got to find a new school. It just goes on and on and on. So we need to focus. And I think we're missing the mark in general, right? We need to focus on the bigger picture. In our Micron Global Health and Wellbeing Group has identified their own five pillars, and they're very. You can read in Tom Rath's book on well-being, and you can read a lot of these different books on overall well-being, and you'll see a lot of similarities in these pillars. Physical, mental, social, career, and financial are the five pillars that our internal group has identified that they're going to be focusing on. And I think that pretty much covers it all in a way that creates a whole person, a whole well person, because they all interact, right? And in going back to Tom Rath, because I love that book of his, they say that an estimated 7% of the people have been able to master the five elements. That's 7%. That's a lot of people that don't, and there's going to be one thing that's good financially. You're making a lot of money. Great. Your financial wellness is fine. You're doing well in your career. But you're just not in good shape. And we talked about before this, can the camera please take 20 pounds off instead of adding it, right? Physically, we could be doing better, right? So you're missing the mark in one of these. And if you miss the mark in one of them, it tends to pull down the other ones because you've got that gap that needs to get filled somewhere else. So that's my thoughts on what we're missing. I think we're missing the big picture, and I think we're missing, and myself included, I'm not going to say that our program addresses this as efficiently as we should. I sure am excited to work on it now that you've made me think about it a little bit more. But the entire person and the entire family and whatever else, whatever other sort of support mechanisms they need, we need to buff that out for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's something that you mentioned, if somebody is not hitting on one or two of those 7 elements, it can really bring them down. And it's very difficult when somebody is trying to, there's so much pressure that I have to make this assignment work, because it could then translate into the rest of my career. This could have a cascading effect. And so not knowing when they can reach out to somebody or get that support that they need can create even more pressure. So being able to have that transparency and being able to not only talk about these issues, but at the very least, let them know where they can get those resources when they need it, if they might not be hitting one of those 7 categories. That's a great transition to kind of what I want to ask next is how does your company support wellness and mental health of Micron's employees? And how is it communicated to them? How do they know to reach out?
Well, Micron's done a really good job in the past few years of really buffing out the program, the wellness program. I think when I first got here 5.5 years ago, there was a couple people working on it, and it was kind of like your traditional sort of, we've got a gym and we've got some classes here and there. But over the last few years, I think the team, last count that I saw, the team is up to about 25 or 27 people around the world. So we have a specialist at each of our locations. We have what's called team member advocates, several of those around the world, where you can go to that person, not an employee relations, not an employee type of an issue, but if you got an outside of work issue, there's a person there that you can call up and you can talk to, and they're wonderful. They've got the resources and they're it's almost like an employee resources type of a situation, but not the employee part, right? So they've got the resources in place. Programming has increased exponentially. Wellness classes and master classes and financial classes and all sorts of different items. We also have a pretty robust employee resource group program here, where you can join up and find people, networks within the company that have similar interests as you as well, and that's very helpful. And the great thing about the employee resource groups is they're not dependent upon anything structural, right? Like if you're a VP or you're a desk clerk, it doesn't matter. You're going to be equal in these groups, and so it brings this sense of value to all different levels. And the networking. I would say I get out and play soccer with the guys every couple times a week at lunch, and we've got VPs all the way down to to whatever other level they have out there. And it's no big deal. Nobody has that. When you're in that environment, nobody has that structural concept. It's all just people with a common interest, and everybody bringing equal amounts of value.
Yeah,
to that miniature community. About the how do they market it? We get emails, we get notices, newsletters. It's available on our intranet. the thing that's really cool about the well-being group here is they provide a different newsletter to each region, right? So the region in the Singapore newsletter for the well-being is different than the U.S. newsletter, different from the Boise newsletter, because there's different resources, and so they focus on your area specifically, which is really fun. We pass those around within our team because we got people in all the regions. So we pass those around in our teams and have a lot of fun with them and seeing what they've got going on and what we've got going on. And so it adds that element of fun to our team as well.
I know a lot of assignments are often unaccompanied, but when the family is involved, perhaps it's family staying behind, is there any support, or is it the focus primarily on the employee?
Well, the team member advocate that I talked about, those are primarily for the employees. So families don't have access to that. But everything else that we provide, families have full access to. And you bring up a really good point about leaving the families behind, or even families on assignment. You've probably got better data than I do on this, on the failure, the reasons for failure of assignments, right? It's X% is because of family matters. And so while our program isn't specifically focused on mobility, we sure can tap in on that to help to provide, some resources to the families. So yeah, everything that's available to the team members is available to the families. And some of the stuff even goes beyond families. It goes to neighbors and friends as well. When we're doing vaccinations, you could bring your neighbor if you wanted, and with the testing and those sorts of things as well. That's just one single example, but a lot of the items that we have are available to families, friends, enemies, if you want. What the heck? If you want to make them your friend, that's right. Yeah.
Well, that's great, because that's also, I think that goes hand in hand with the topic of mental wellness. Is we're seeing kind of the fabric of families and the demographics change quite a bit. Is the success of an assignment or transfer or move is not only just the employee, it's the family and kind of that village that supports the employee and team member. So that's a really nice benefit, nice message to send to incoming employees that you're there to take care of the whole picture.
Yeah.
Relocating employees are widely known by mobility professionals to have a higher level of experience, but that comes with a lot of stress. The importance of their roles in the organization, as you mentioned earlier, a 1% difference can translate into a huge either cost savings or efficiency to the corporation. What are some of the consequences to a company if they don't address wellness when it comes to mobility?
Wow, that's another topic that we could spend an entire hour on. Is just stress. I mean, stress is a bad stress. Let's not confuse it, because there is some good stress in our lives that helps motivate us, to a certain degree. But I think bad stress is much more prevalent. Stress can create more stress, right? It's a cumulative, it's a chemical reaction in your body, and it's cumulative. And if it doesn't get a chance to flush out, it's just going to grow on top of itself, right? It's like a cancer. If you don't get rid of it, it can build upon itself, and it can get where it's kind of like they talk about death by 1,000 cuts, right? So you're stressed about your move, you're stressed about your family, you're stressed about your kids' school, you're stressed because your wife can't find a new doctor or whatever, and then something small happens at work and you just blow up. Right. And I know we've all done it, right? I'm trying not to say that too out loud, but you take something a little too hard and you look back and go, gosh, why did I take that so hard? Because it really wasn't that big of a deal. But it is a big deal in your body, because you've got this cumulative effect and you only have so much capacity, right? And when that capacity runs out, you're done. So managing the stress and helping with the stress, and this is where these 5 pillars of well-being comes into place, is to help them manage that stress overall. And yes, it all ties in together, but you're going to have a better employee if you can you can't get rid of the stress, but you can help manage it, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so not underestimating stress and not thinking that you can just overcome it and those sorts of things. Like going back to this generational thing, stress, and I just got to man up and deal with it. It doesn't work like that. Physically, it doesn't work like that. And then you end up in a burnout situation. And burnout situations are actual physical responses, right? This is not, and that becomes a mental issue. It's your whole body has got a problem, and you lose an employee, you lose a good employee. right? And then you've got to find another one. We know the cost of replacing a team member is 3 times salary is what they estimate, right? So that becomes a cost. So really it affects the bottom line. So a dollar of what an ounce of prevention saves a pound of cure was the old saying, right? So it really is something that needs to be addressed. It's something that needs to be um, taken care of and made aware of, and not only because of the individuals, but also because the bottom line, the company. You want the best employees and the best opportunity. We work in a very highly competitive environment. It's crazy here. And if we don't have our best people, or if we don't have the best people working at their best capabilities, we're putting ourselves at a disadvantage, and we just can't afford to do that.
I want to end with talking a little bit about the mental health of mobility professionals. We're the ones taking care of other people, and our best employees in our industries. That old saying of always put on your oxygen mask before assisting others on flights seems to apply here. When you're bringing on a new team member or anybody within the Micron organization, is there any advice that you would give them to protect themselves as they're taking care of others?
Yes, I have a whole list of things. Thank you for opening up that can of worms. Really, taking care of yourself first is paramount. That's the number one priority. Make sure you're okay, because you can't make sure you can't save a drowning person if you're drowning yourself, right? So you need to make sure you create boundaries, right? You have to create some boundaries, and we're pretty good at this as a team. You build your team so that they can help each other, right? Nobody sits in a silo. That way you can you can create your boundaries, and you can stick to them. Of course, you got to break them every once in a while. We all have weekend calls or 9-10 p.m. calls every once in a while, but you can't let that happen as a regular occurrence. You have to be militant about your boundaries. You have to understand your priorities. Validate them with your leader, and I think that's one of the things in a fast-paced environment like this that we struggle with so hard is what we call competing priorities. You've got a priority, you're working on something, then something urgent comes up. You have to put that one on the background, or you have to put those 4 on the background on the back burner to work on this one. And then another one comes up on top of that one, another one comes on top of that one. Now those 4 are almost falling off of the radar, right? So that creates an issue in and of itself, because you don't ever really get to feel that you've completed something, and you've got all these different things and you're trying to figure out what you need to do. And it's basically becomes paralysis by analysis, right? You're trying to figure out, you have so much to do that you can't do anything. So I think, understanding your priorities, validating those with your leaders, having an open conversation with your leader about what's happening and what's not happening, and coming with solutions, not excuses. That's one of the first lessons I learned as an employee, and one of the first lessons that people that work in my team, I like to let them know as well. Like, don't come with excuses or problems. Come with solutions. And if you don't have a solution, yeah, let's work it out together. But you need to think about those things. You have to own your own experience. Lean on others. Ask for help, for crying out loud. I'm always open, and my leader's always open. I can always ask her for help if I need help, and that's a really, really good feeling to have, and a great card to have in your back pocket when you know that you just can't do it. You got to ask somebody, and there's somebody there that you can ask. The resources I mentioned earlier, we have a ton of resources here at Micron. Figure them out. Look at them. Look for them. Look into them. There's a ton of classes on different things: communication, leadership, mentoring, et cetera, et cetera. Look into those classes. Dig into the resources that are there for you. But again, it all goes back to taking responsibility for your own experience and driving for solutions, right? So everybody has unique issues. So you have to identify your unique issues. I don't have kids in soccer anymore, but I have team members that do. And so they have different needs than I do. They got to be gone at 4:00 in the afternoon to pick their kid up from school. That's cool. Work till 11 p.m. instead. I'm just kidding. But that's really my advice to anybody new coming into the mobility industry. Look for the resources that you have. Ask for help. Find a mentor if you need to, if that would help you. And those are all, it's all about taking responsibility for yourself.
And, as I personally have worked with a number of your own team members, those directly on your team, and with all the resources that the company provides, I really do get that sense that it is kind of an open door policy. They have that support. We've come to the end, but I won't let you go until I ask you the final question. We talk a lot about at Weichert about making work happen. Let's make work happen. Tom, how do you make work happen at Micron?
How do I make work happen? Well, coffee. That's number one. Lots of coffee. No, I'm just kidding. I I think having a sense of humor about things is super, super important. Obviously, you know me, and that's I interject humor here and there, maybe sometimes a little bit too much, but that's how I roll. That's what helps me get through. But knowing when to be serious about serious items, knowing what you can control, what you can't control, and I think that's the hardest thing for me, and it's the hardest thing for a lot of people. Is if I can't control it, I got to let it go, right?
Mhm.
And that's difficult to do, not because I'm a control freak, but it's just I want to have an influence. I want to help. I want to make a change. So that's where that comes. Enjoying what you're doing and enjoying the people that are around you. If you don't like it, leave it. Or fix it. One or the other, right? The grass is not always greener on the other side. Sometimes you have to fertilize the grass that's on your side,
Mhm.
and that's an easier thing to do than jump a fence and hope that the grass is greener when you're actually standing on it. Like I said about setting boundaries, and I mentioned soccer, but that's one of my hobbies. I love doing other things. I love taking the canoe out during the summer. I love dirt biking. I love camping. Those sorts of things that allow me to escape, right? So you have to create some level of no matter what it is, you have to create some level of escapism for yourself. People like movies, they like reading books, or whatever it is that takes you away from your work, and so you can compartmentalize it a little bit more. Unfortunately, you can't really compartmentalize mental wellness or mental health because it's all encompassing. But I think the very most important thing in getting work done is that you give your dog a comfortable place to sleep in your home office.
That's great. I love it. I'm a big advocate of bringing pets to work.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
it's all about enjoying what you do, and making the connections with the people that you enjoy being with.
well, Tom, thank you so much for your time. You're an absolute expert on this topic.
Don't know about that.
And
I do enjoy it. I do
yeah,
enjoy it, and
I can tell
it's
this really
fascinating.
speaks
Yeah.
to what your experience and how well you know your people. And I look forward to continuing this discussion. Enjoy the rest of your day and talk soon.
Same to
Bye
you.
bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye.